Scott Evans was serving his country as a Marine in 1982 when he learned his prized possession, a 1965 Shelby GT 350 Mustang, which his father had helped him buy in the 1970s, had been stolen from his residence in Havelock, North Carolina. Evans didn't know it then, but his promise to find that car one day would come true. He just didn't know it would take him over 25 years to fulfill that promise.
I promised my dad, who had passed away a number of years ago from Alzheimer's, that I was going to find the car before I died.
And find it he did. But before we get to the details of how he'd recovered it, it's time to take a step back to 1971 and how his love affair with a muscle car all came about.
Used to drive down Oak Ridge Road. I'd drive by this apartment complex and see this car sitting at the apartment complex. And one day I was driving back west and looked in my rearview mirror, and there was a for sale sign in the back window. Immediately stopped, went around and investigated.
Scott paid $1,600 for the Ford and drove it everywhere he went in his hometown of Orlando, Florida, until that one day in March of 1982 when it was stolen and he never saw it again. End of story, right? No happy ending? One would think so, but then that was until the day when the Maryland State Police, a director of a car club, and the NICB became involved in the story.
Scott subsequently reported it to the police department, and thereafter he was deployed to Japan. He was in the Marines at the time. The vehicle was entered into NCIC, but they were not able to contact him after a short period of time to follow up, and took the vehicle out of NCIC.
The car was stolen and went through a Mustang restoration shop, which all they did was change the ID plate and sold it to a party in Long Island, New York, and that fella had the car for 3 years and then sold it to this other family who had it for 22 years. The fellow who owned it passed away and his son was willed the car.
In 2007, he was contacted by Howard Pardee, the registrar for the Shelby Club of America, who holds all the records, and had information that his car was possibly suspected in New York. Law enforcement agents went to that residence in New York, which was the registered owner. However, the car was located in Maryland.
Bruce Flogger, knew that we had to have the car active in NCIC before they could take it. They knew where the car was, but we had to work with Havelock Police Department to get it put back in the computer. And then Howard Pardee at SAC, he has the Ford VIN numbers that correlate to which Shelby VIN number went on that body. So he's the one that verified and schooled Maryland State Trooper as to what a counterfeit ID plate looks like and a counterfeit stamping.
It had a bogus Shelby VIN plate on it. Scott was obviously elated when we were able to contact him and tell him that we had located his car after some 25 years of it being stolen.
As for the previous owner,
he couldn't understand how they were taking the car from him, because he said it couldn't be stolen. We've had it 22 years. And then the trooper and NICB said, well, we know you had it for 22 years, but it was stolen 25 years ago.
12 weeks later, Evans was on his way north to recover the car at a state police warehouse in Jessup, Maryland, but not before doing an honorable thing for the previous owner of his car.
The person that was in possession of it actually put a new engine in, and when Scott came up to retrieve the car, he paid the person the $12,000 that he had invested in the new engine.
It'd be only prudent to pay him for what he spent on the new engine and everything, because now I have the new engine and everything, and figured I'd have spent that much money in the last 25 years on engines anyway.
25 years and 5 months later, on August 18, 2007, Scott Evans had his vehicle back, and he immediately knew it was the same exact car after all these years.
I told him that on the steering wheel, the left side, the first rivet up from the spoke that comes out, there's a crack, and I cracked it trying to push the car and pull on the steering wheel at the same time. And also the gasket underneath the gas cap there, keeping the gas cap from scratching the paint, I made when I was in the Navy out of a piece of rubber that thick, and it's still there, and you can tell it's handmade.
One other item that slipped his mind was literally written on the car all those years.
Pulled the transmission out, and it's got my name in black ink on the top of it.
Did you remember you had put that on there?
I I must have put it on there. I mean, because it's my handwriting. My wife even said, "That's your handwriting," you know. So, what a deal! That's unbelievable.
Today, Scott has his dream car back and in mint condition, and this collector's edition is worth a little bit more than the $1,600 he originally paid for it.
I would guess anywhere from $250,000 to maybe 400,000.
Scott had never heard of NICB before this process. Now that he knows us, he has a glowing opinion.
I think they're awesome.
And 25 years later, we can close the door on this case. Scott has his car back home once again. For the National Insurance Crime Bureau, I'm Roger Morris.